Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Amnesia, The Dark Descent. This is hopefully going to be our finale. I say hopefully because I've been doing this. Alright, if you've been watching the whole meta surrounding this, and I can't imagine that you would have, because why would you have done that? But I started in the middle of Amnesia. I played through till the prison cells, and then I tried to record the finale, and I effed it up. I'm not sure how I effed it up, but I didn't hit my, start recording hotkeys properly or whatever, so I finished Amnesia, and I had an hour of black screen with my voiceover. So, I went back. Actually, why don't we just go ahead and jump in here? I went back, I started a new game, and I played through the whole game again, cheating wildly to get back to where I was, turned off all of the cheat stuff, I'm back in the jail cell, and since then I have tried 2 additional times to record the finale. One time I got, oh hang on, I'll shut up for the cutscene here. It's like a cutscene. Can I move? Yeah, okay, I have a little control. But Alexander's going to want to chat for a bit.
You had me worried. Quite frankly, I'm not sure what to do with you. I hold no grudge against you, Daniel. We are so very much the same, you and I.
Yeah.
Did you really drink from the amnesia mixture? It does explain so much of your behavior. You never did finish what you set out to do. You talked about redemption, how you would face the orb's shadow and save our work, and me. I will grant you another chance to redeem yourself. You can wait here and stop the shadow. Thank you, friend.
Alright. My time here is kind of limited, but I'll try to go over the basics. So what I did, you can see here, is I hacked into the save file itself, and I gave myself like 1 billion sanity and 1 billion health, and unlimited oil. Not unlimited, just a ridiculous amount, like the little meter here was, the little graphic was actually shooting up through to the top of the screen, and I gave myself 1,000 tinder boxes, because why not? Since then, as you can see, I've turned everything back down to normal. Here I have a few cuts and bruises, let's fix that. I have been really good at conserving my oil, but because I was running on infinite oil, I actually didn't bother picking up many oil pots the second time around. The only thing I didn't fix for whatever reason was the tinder boxes. I shut everything else back down to the normal values because I saved what they originally were, so I put everything back, except for whatever reason I didn't put back my tinder boxes. Don't know why I did that, but now I get to tell you the secret of how I got back to here, that no one cares about because it's not actually that important. But anyway, I promise you I'm not actually actively cheating here. I'm not going to use any of these tinder boxes to get through the finale because I don't need them. In fact, I barely need the lantern. I doubt I'll go through even this much oil. So, I know that because, like I said, I've done this like 3 times now. The first time around, I got nothing but black. The second time around, I got all black screen again, no video, just my voiceover. The third time, I got my desktop. I have no idea how I managed that. I must have left a setting on saying choose a specific window and told it to do monitor capture rather than the game. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I've checked though, and this time it's actually working. So this one's going to be for real, and I'm excited about that because I want to be done with this already. So the first time around I spent so long in this cell, actually, that I died, because if you wait long enough, the shadows, pulsy red sacks start showing up. So I ended up looking up the solution online, and that's where you discover that there's a bit of loose brick over there. Apparently there are several ways to get out of here. Like you can drag this bed over, apparently, and stand on it and try to jump through this little gap. But I think this is the standard one. This is the canon solution, if you will. That's to wedge that in there. Give it a push. Come on. Come on. There we go. Pick that back up. And then you just reach through here and push this beam out. Oh! And that crumbles the wall. Ta-da! Anyway, so I've done this a whole bunch of times, so I know everything. I know all of the solutions. But I'll try maybe to give you some of the experience. But since this is the finale, I also kind of want to give you my final thoughts on Amnesia, which are that Amnesia is pretty great. I'd rate it a B on an ABCD scale, 3 out of 4 stars, however you want to. Like, scores are kind of weird to me. I think a lot of people like using scores as a metric, but I like just kind of giving a general, did I like it, did I not like it, and if I liked it, do I think it was just passable, or do I think it was really spectacular, or do I think it was my favorite thing of all time? So ABCD works pretty well for that. Anyway, here's a note, which I have read 3 times now. I screwed it up every time. I always make a mistake reading this, so I'm going to see if I can get it. There is little left to say. I write solely to prevent myself from revisiting the memories of these last few days. If I am fortunate, I will fall asleep and time will pass without effort. I have begun to wean myself of my prison. When I first arrived, I felt like I was being buried inside a tomb, but now I feel the close walls comforting me. As long as I am in here, there is no pain. The walls protect me from the outside. I even laughed earlier as one of my wardens dropped a key down the pipes. It gave me hope for a second, thinking I could escape if only I could reach it from here. Shit, I fucked it up. There we go. Somehow reach it from here. There. Alright. No, I can't get through this one. Anyway, in my dreams, Alexander, I am king. In my dreams, I best you and escape your clutches and return with all the knights of the realm carrying pistols and sabers. In my dreams. Yeah, Jesus Christ, you'd think with 4 readings I might be able to get through that without missing any words or stumbling over any words, but apparently not. Apparently something about that particular passage just really does not jive. Oh, those are awful noises, hey? And then there's a corpse there. Tinderbox, why not? So this is how I went about it the first time, just so we're clear. I said, well, welcome to a new space, so let's systematically search the rooms. So here we get some laudanum. Important. Very important stuff. And a bucket. First bucket that you're able to pick up, which, that actually pissed me off because I don't like it when games are inconsistent. I'll talk a bit more about inconsistency in Amnesia and how that bothered me in a lot of cases, but first let's try to get out of this room. That's locked, so I need a key. Now the little note over there, I didn't figure this out the first time around, but the little note over there says that the key is in a pipe. So in fact, if we peek through here, there you can see it. And the key's in the pipe, but it can't be reached. I actually didn't figure that part out initially. What I initially realized was that buckets go on wells. So I did this portion. You lower the bucket down, we get a bucket full of water. And then after that I figured out the key thing. And it's at that point that if you're using your critical thinking, you realize, oh, we can flush the key out with the bucket of water. So this is an interesting puzzle because apart from cranking this winch, it's one of these abstract puzzles for the most part, which was one of the other big things I complained about. The inconsistency causing me problems. This is now a physics object too. That's funny. I think that the physics engine of this game is really significant. I think that doing things like when you're running away from a monster, having to fumble over the doors and stuff like that is really cool. I think you know, in a horror film, people stumble and they fall down and stuff like this, and you're like, come on, you forget how to walk just because a monster's chasing you. I was like, yeah, you do. That's something you learn in this game in particular, is that seemingly simple tasks like opening and closing doors or picking up objects to jam a door are really challenging when you're trying to coordinate them while a monster's coming at you. So I think for some people, maybe the fact that this is sort of a weird, the disembodied hand thing is so strange, really upsets things for them. But for me, it was like, that's perfect. That's perfect, because that simulates this sort of awkward fumbling that you do when you're in a state of panic. That, and I never experienced terribly much trouble with it. So anyway, we're going to run here. Because there is the shadow. Well, this is precisely what I'm talking about, like right here. Oh god, the door is jammed. We have to get that out of the way. This is a terrifying moment, because fighting the physics engine, right? Operating the physics engine is a skill unto itself. Oh no, there's a cave. It doesn't matter which way you go. These two passages join up at this point. And it's always the first one you pick that caves in. That was cool. The first time I played through this, I also shrieked as soon as I saw this water. I really shrieked, but that was great. Because as soon as I saw the water, I was like, great, in addition to the shadow chasing, I have to dodge some carrots. So this segment's a pretty high tension moment, and it's good because they're playing on a number of the fears that they've built up so far through the game. Fear of the shadow, fear of the fumbling operations, fear of having to navigate these spaces while something is chasing you, and then fear of the water itself, all kind of compressed into one moment. So I thought that was pretty good. It was pretty effective. Got my heart pounding really well the first time that I played through it. At the same time, though, it's sort of a terror moment. It's a I'm in danger, I need to get out of danger moment. And I find those actually less frightening than the hiding, than skulking around, trying to avoid monsters that don't know you're there. And the reason is because when you're in immediate danger, just getting out of danger, I switch into a focused kind of problem-solving mode. I feel competent. I feel this is a challenge I can overcome. There's a character down there. Ooh. But what I don't feel necessarily is just panic and terror, right? When you're in danger and you have a challenge to overcome, I mean, that's the same sort of thing that you experience in ordinary action games. It's the same thing you experience in shooters, just because there are enemies around. Yeah, things like the fact that I have no weapons and all I'm doing is running, that makes it a little more frightening than it would be otherwise. Elements of horror, like not knowing which direction to go, that kind of thing, also adds to that helplessness. But it still comes down to just, I know I need to run, I'm just going to run. And I can easily focus through the fear at that stage. Whereas when I'm hiding from monsters, I panic instantly. I go running around for a hiding place, and I jump into a corner and I shake, Again, I know I don't necessarily actually make a lot of noise on the video, but, my pulse is picking up and I can feel the panic, even if I'm not outwardly very obviously terrified. So that's one thing. I think Amnesia excels most because of the elements where you're hiding, and it falls apart more. Not completely, but it's just not as frightening when it's moments like running from the shadow or running from the Carrick. Anyway, here's a lovely story bit. This note. So yeah, Daniel, obviously, he's been morally corrupted over the course of this, but I think this note and watching this segment was the moment where everything kind of turned for me, where I was really like, I can see that he's decaying, but he's probably still redeemable.
1839. Tonight, we will unlock the power of the orb and ultimately banish the shadow hunting me.
But
I
here,
feel it closing in on me, and I fear for my life more than ever.
he gives a strong justification there. This is about survival.
Just outside Bonstadt lies a small settlement where Zimmerman, a dairy farmer, lives with his wife and 3 children.
But now we get the revelation that, of course, he's attacking innocents to fuel the ceremonies.
Went there. Our visit was unexpected, and Alexander was able to strike Zimmerman down without alerting the others.
Now, most ethical
As he
rules...
went to take care of the farmhands, I began to look for the children.
There it is. Most ethical rules don't permit going after innocents to survive under any
We should
circumstances.
have more than enough prisoners to finish the ritual now.
You know, even if your life is on the line, you're kind of the expectation essentially is that you'd sacrifice your life rather than harm innocents. I can understand that from a pragmatic perspective, like when your life is on the line, everything else becomes secondary. But this is the moment when it was like, oh, Daniel's a murderer. Daniel's a very bad man. He's gone off the deep end. And I mean, it's more than even just the moral deep end. When you find yourself willing to perform these kind of deeds, that's when your sanity is going off the deep end, right? Under normal circumstances, when you get to the point where, oh, we have to go and capture some children now to sacrifice to perform this weird satanic ceremony, that's a point where you say, excuse me, but should we maybe not do that? Like, is this maybe the point at which I start asking questions and demanding to know what's really going on, why this is necessary, before I'm willing to proceed? So this was the point for me where it was like, okay, I'm maybe not the same person that Daniel was, but the person, because of course the amnesia thing, right? We're effectively separate personalities now, but the person that Daniel was really doesn't deserve redemption. You know, he's corrupt. He's gone too far. And the endings of this game are a little ambiguous as far as whether they think, as whether the creators, for instance, think that Daniel is redeemed. But we'll get to that. There are 3 endings to this game, and those 3 endings will go over kind of that ambiguity and that question about whether Daniel deserves to live, deserves to be redeemed, to be considered a good, virtuous person again. So here's the laboratory. So I'll stop talking about the story for a section here, because this is a fantastic example. Like, the bucket was a pretty good example too, but this is a fantastic example of what I describe as the inconsistency and the disconnect between the physics-based puzzles, where your job is to turn cranks and flip switches and, pick up gears and load them onto axles, and then the abstract puzzles where it's sort of adventure game stuff. Here's a poison gland from a mushroom. Let's extract fluid from it, right, by a completely abstract process. So this is not bad. I put the jar on the thing, I turn the crank, and that completes an abstract puzzle thing by purifying this solution, right? Purify the solution is sort of a just verb MacGuffin X kind of thing to do, but the fact that it's mediated by setting an object there and turning a crank here at least ties it back into the physics thing. Here's an interesting one. When I set the jar there, I clicked on the top of that, which worked. When I set the jar here, I'm going to set it on the table. I want you to remember that, because in a moment something's going to happen that really pissed me off. I happen to know that this is the bone. Again, in other puzzles, like the coal-burning furnace, I had to physically pick up a piece of coal and drop it in a container. Because this was an object from my inventory, I can't manipulate it as a physics object, so it just sort of appears there. But that's the kind of thing, like, I wish almost that there was no inventory, or that selecting an object from the inventory just caused it to, appear in my grip, like one of these objects, for instance. Anyway, I'll shut up and actually get on with this. I wish those things mostly because I just wish that the physics engine was doing more stuff. You know, because if the physics engine is how various problems are being mediated, then I wouldn't run into situations where I don't understand what I'm meant to do. Like, here. Okay, first of all, here. So if the jar is an object, right, this is a crushing device. I'm going to put the mushroom thing in between and press it to crush the fluid. The jar needs to be underneath it. So thinking of the jar as an object, I just try to put it on the table. Now they thought this far ahead and made sure that when you click on the table here, the jar appears there. That's why I asked you to remember that. But they didn't do it on this one. So what you end up actually having to do is clicking the jar on the device itself. And that's again, you know, it's a little bit of disconnect because it's just the thing you have to do to solve this part of the puzzle is use jar on press, not the physical motion, which is set the jar on the table beneath the press. That's what happens anyway, but that's not what you do. So I actually spent, 2 minutes or something just clicking wildly around this room trying to figure out how to make this work before I accidentally pressed on the right space. Now we have our potion. Alright, so what's the deal there? The deal is consistency. And consistency is what bugs me. Consistency is the biggest thing that I think... Well, it's not the biggest thing, but it's one of the big things that's holding back Amnesia from being a perfect, a 10 out of 10, an A game, one of my absolute favorites. And it's because of things like this. This was mostly an abstract puzzle where I just had to know, okay, I guess I'll put the jar of blood over the flame to purify it. That doesn't actually make any sense. The water would be lost and we'd be left with a congealed pile of dead blood cells, But since I have like a note somewhere in here that tells me, I can't remember which one it is, but I have a note somewhere in here that tells me that I need to purify the blood to get the vitae out of it. Anyway, there's sort of just this figuring out a completely abstract puzzle versus the physics. The big instance that I constantly calls to mind is the bomb. There's a note explaining that the bomb is very motion sensitive, so when you have to set off that bomb at the bottom of those stairs, you're supposed to chuck a rock at it. But I didn't realize that. I was just like, okay, so the bomb's not going off, so I must have to go find a fuse. I spent I don't know how long just wandering around. Let's find a fuse. Because I was thinking it was going to be one of these adventure gamey kind of abstract puzzles. Like this. And it wasn't. It was a physics puzzle. So, what I'm thinking is if every puzzle's a physics puzzle, if it's always just a matter of put the object in the right place, chuck rocks around, pull levers, if it's always being mediated by this disembodied hand, then you won't run into problems where I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be using the disembodied hand or if I'm supposed to just find a key. Because it'll all work this way. It'll all be consistent, and I'll know how to solve puzzles much more intuitively. So there's a complaint. Overall, I still really like it. I like that there are puzzles that use the physics thing. I like that even the puzzles that are abstract use the physics at least a little bit for things like flipping switches. Oh.
The laboratory might be accessible.
Sorry, I'll shut up and let you listen to a group of here. Talk, man. Fine. Be a dick.
You did it.
Oh.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Now, pay attention. First, feed me the tonic, and then use the saw to remove my head.
Sure thing.
As the tonic begins to work, you'll be able to cut off my head without taking my life.
Awesome.
Then, take my head and bring it with you. As you enter the gate, Alexander is opening in the inner sanctum.
Okay.
What do you mean? Why wouldn't you enter the gate? I can't argue now. You need to act.
Alright, so there's a prime example of another instance of inconsistency being the thing that tears this game down. Everywhere else that there's a conversation happening, it's strictly one-sided. you're reading notes from diaries. Hang on, I'll just do this while I talk. You're reading notes from diaries, or you're getting telepathic messages from either your memories or from Alexander.
Get me through that gate.
And here, Agrippa's talking directly to you. You should be able to respond to him, but you can't. They didn't account for it. They didn't include a way to respond. They sort of just worked around it by having him have this one-sided conversation where you, the player, maybe are talking in response to him, just like I was a moment ago there. But if I don't know what to say...
I was my pupil. My pupil.
If I don't know what to say, or if I say the wrong thing, then total breach of immersion.
Is it so wrong?
There's another thing, right? You saw on dude. Why can't I physically cut his head off? I mean, that's a little gruesome, and it was probably actually just came down to a resources thing where it would have taken too much time and money to program that. But, I would have liked it. It would have been ugly. I shouldn't say I would have liked it. Not like, yes, I love to cut off heads. But that would have been uncomfortable. And discomfort in a horror game is a good thing. It's part of creating those disquieting feelings that are what make this game thrive. Oh right, I don't go out this way. Go the other way. Anyway. Gross. So what else about inconsistencies? The biggest inconsistency by far, and here we'll get an example of it. The biggest challenge in this game, the most exciting challenge, the bit that I thought was absolute gold, even though it was, in fact, because it was harrowing, I didn't enjoy it at all while I was playing it. I found it quite uncomfortable, was navigating the choir. Because the monsters in the choir don't despawn. There are the 3 of them, I'm told, in there, and they're just in there. You have to avoid them. When one comes along at you, you have to duck out of sight, find a place to hide, wait for it to move on, then keep going. But you can't use my preferred strategy, which I'll employ here, of
The blood. Use it for the ritual.
setting off a monster. See it in the distance, actually. But of setting off a monster, and then responding to the monster's presence by just running to a corner where the monster won't come and get you, and then waiting for the music to stop. I complained in the initial bit that wasn't really working, because while running and hiding and then sitting there for those first few moments while the monster trudges through the room and back out of the room is absolutely terrifying, absolutely horrifying. I think one of the most painful moments for me was sitting in that kitchen and seeing the shadow move across behind me, because I was facing into the corner at the time under the impression that looking at the monsters was what causes them to detect you. That was properly horrifying, but then the monster wandered off and I sat there for another 10 minutes, completely unsure of what to do. I think the music has stopped now. Yeah, I'm not hearing it, so... The monsters despawned. So, these sections of the game that have a monster that disappears after a bit, they reward the player for doing something boring, basically. And again, it's not so much that the nature of a horror game is that it should be exciting, but a horror game still shouldn't be boring. It should be frightening. It should induce anxiety, right? And those sections don't do it as well. Whereas the choir, because the monsters don't despawn, because waiting means, first of all, accomplishing nothing, getting no closer to your goal. And secondly, because waiting means, in some cases, waiting for the thing to happen to wander right back into the same space and put you at risk again. Oh, right, I need the tar. was I saying? Oh, yeah. It makes that whole situation just a lot more aggravating. You know you have to keep moving. You know you have to keep going forward in spite of the fear, right? Maybe that emboldens some people, but for me at least, it was the proper fear. It was the knowledge that getting through this section means repeatedly exposing myself to things that I find frightening. Okay, we're gonna shut this door. So in addition to setting up the orb in there, I need to shut off the whirling machinery of that passageway. So I have to mess with the machinery that's down those stairs. But first, let's get another story bit.
10th of August, 1839. I cannot believe what I have become. One of the girls escaped and I chased after her all the way upstairs. I hunted her down, and what is her life worth? How many lives can I take before I surrender my own? Sure, I would kill a murderer to save an innocent, but to kill an innocent to save myself? A cold-blooded murderer.
Touching briefly back on the story stuff, you can see there Daniel knows that he's gone off the deep end. It's part of the reason why in a moment we find out he takes the amnesia potion, obviously, and all that stuff. It's because he can't live with himself and what he's done. So in that sense, again, we're getting back to, okay, maybe Daniel is an okay guy if he's got the moral fiber to recognize what he's done. But you'll also see in a moment that he mostly blames all this on Agrippa. And you know what? That's how humans do. You know, again, pragmatism. Yourself comes first. And if you can't live with yourself and the fact that you're a murderer, you find a way to absolve yourself. You find a way to blame somebody else so that psychologically you can tolerate being who you are and dealing with what you've done. Alright, so here we go. Sorry, I'm being quiet now because I know there's a... God damn it. This happened on one of my 3 replays as well. Normally there's supposed to be a monster spawn right after you break those gears.
You should kill them all. Burn this castle to the ground.
But, well, whatever. If he didn't spawn, he didn't spawn. Ugh. Anyway. Daniel knows he's a bad guy. Maybe that makes him a little more okay, but I don't know. We'll talk about that more later. We got plenty of time to talk about that when we're looking at the endings. The big thing I wanted to get at was inconsistency. I talked about, okay, the choir's good. Those other sections and this section with this monster that spawns and despawns, not as good. You know, it's the difference between a briefly horrifying moment and a constant tension, right? But why is that inconsistency then? The trick is, in the first occasion when they switched from a monster that despawns to a monster that doesn't despawn, I didn't know that switch had taken place. I sat in a room for like 10 minutes straight or something, and on the video I had to compress it and play stupid music over the top of it, because I was waiting for the music to go away. I was waiting for the monster to disappear, and it was never going to do that. The game had trained me through the course of several levels to play a certain way, and then it went back on its word, so to speak. Alright, so now the tunnel isn't moving, so we just have to shut off the electric stuff. So that inconsistency resulted in a really sort of this dumb situation where, again, I'm still bored, but I was just sitting there for forever, expecting my, play it safe, just wait it out strategy to be successful when it couldn't be. Here we have again, I'm assembling this. I was dreading it, but I legitimately thought that I was going to have to put these pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle rather than just this, where I put them in and this thing sort of assembles itself. And again, maybe that was a cost time issue, and they originally meant for it to be hand assembled, but it would have been so much nicer, I think, if you'd had to use the physics stuff to piece it together. I would have liked that more. Whoa. Here comes the shadow. Okay, so we've talked about inconsistencies, we've talked about Daniel's kind of moral struggle. So I guess there's one other thing to talk about, and that's linearity. This isn't exactly a knock against Amnesia so much as it is just what I wish for games in general. So I'll forgive. I'm not going to really give you the running narrative of how I solved this little puzzle, because I didn't solve it. I sort of just stumbled around. It's like, oh, I can click on that. Ow, that hurt. Oh, what do I do now? There's a glowing spot on the ground. What's that about? And I stood over top of it. Oh, the lights went out. I can hear a rumbling stone noise. That was the whole thing. Like, I just sort of... I tripped my way through this particular puzzle, so I don't actually know... I don't even know if they tell you what you're supposed to do here. They hijack your camera and make sure you read this note, though, because this note's important.
19th of August, 1839. It's not fair. I'm not to blame.
There you go.
I've been manipulated by that demon.
Yeah.
He played my guilty conscience and duped me into facing the shadow alone.
Yeah, you have no responsibility.
That vile, conspiring man.
Shitbag.
He expects me to meet my death as he steals power beyond imagination.
The phrasing is really
Alexander,
telling, too.
I will kill you for what you have done. If only the shadow had caught me in London or Algeria, I wouldn't have to suffer this humiliation.
Humiliation?
You made me a murderer. A monster.
You made me it.
Now,
I'm humiliated.
merely await my death.
Not, I'm
And
guilty.
too weak
Not,
to press on.
like, you know what I mean?
Can hardly stand as my knees fail me. I cannot see.
Not a lot of
as my
empathy for the
eyes are
victims.
dressed in tears. I am as broken as the men I've tortured. If only I could wipe my fear away, as we did with them.
And that's also telling, right? You know, he snaps from anger to sobbing, and it's like, I don't really get the sense that you're as broken as you claim to be. But it's obvious, I'm as broken as the men I tortured. Oh, the thing he's trying to say is, I've suffered too, so regard me as a victim, not a villain. I can't do it, Daniel. You are accountable for a lot of what's happened here. You had many opportunities to walk away and die. You had many opportunities to demand more information, to investigate, to just say no anyway. There has to be another way to do this. I'm not going to murder innocent children, you know? But you didn't do that. Here we'll get to talk about the three endings, because we'll play through all three of them, because I like looking at the differences between each one, and I like talking about this, because this is the single most disappointing part of this entire game, is this ending right here. Alright.
I was wondering if you were going to show up. I see Agrippa convinced you to run some errands. Tell me, is everything nice and clear now? Am I the villain?
No to the first one, yes to the other?
And evil. Such comforting concepts, but hardly applicable. Are
Technically,
you
yes.
so blind that you see no good in me or evil in Agrippa?
You know, the claim to moral ambiguity is really revealing of the fact that you... Oh, I wonder if I'm supposed to do something with these pillars. The claim to moral ambiguity is really revealing of the fact that you, sir, don't especially grasp the significance of what you've done either. You're justifying stuff away. Oh, good and evil, Luna. You're not real, do you? It doesn't matter if good and evil are not actually important or useful concepts. You still murdered children. You're still a bad dude. And I'm still gonna fuck you up for it. So why don't we do that? They give us a ridiculous amount of time here to figure out that what we're supposed to do is knock over these pillars.
Don't do that.
And he reacts like a freaking child.
I realize you doubt my intentions. Why would I take such extreme measures to save your life? Maybe I'm saving mine too.
Yeah, no shit. I found all the diary entries talking about you seeing your wife back in the other world or whatever the hell. I know that this is a selfishly motivated thing. Alright, so the three endings are destroying these pillars, or waiting for the portal to open and then either letting him go through the portal, leaving me to die, or grabbing Agrippa's head out of my inventory and putting Agrippa through the portal.
Do you see it?
There we go.
A whole other world. Isn't it?
So we'll start with the Agrippa one. This is the good ending.
I can finally
So the reason this is the quote-unquote good ending is because Daniel dies in it. He's left behind in the chamber while Agrippa goes through the actual portal. There we go.
Fool! You have ruined us!
So, old man Alexander here. Ooh, that doesn't look comfortable. He dies. And then we die because... Ooh, there we go. Now this is the one in which theoretically Daniel has properly redeemed himself. He's allowed himself to die to rescue somebody who is much more so been the victim. It's not that Agrippa's completely innocent, it's just that Agrippa is probably, of the three of them,
There he is.
the least
Do you see
horrible.
him, Vaya? He deserves so much more.
And so, in response to his sacrifice,
Please, help him. I know you can.
it's non-specific, but in some way, Daniel is rescued. I don't like it,
Don't worry,
in
Daniel.
particular.
It will be all right.
Because even though it's ambiguous what exactly happens to Daniel, the point of sacrifice is sacrifice. I don't like this idea. They do it a lot in fiction, honestly, where somebody makes a heroic sacrifice, and then the sacrifice part of it is undone. I killed myself to save Agrippa. Oh, but I get to live too. Well, then I didn't really kill myself, did I? It's things like, I don't know, the hero dies, Neo dies in the Matrix, but he gets to come back to life afterward, right? Well, as a writer, show some balls, actually kill your characters. If they're supposed to die as a heroic sacrifice, don't undermine it by letting them live afterward. So this is the good ending, but I feel like it would be more unambiguously good if Alexander and Daniel, the two villains of the piece, stay dead. But other than that, we're gonna get to see what's called the revenge ending, but I guess I'd like to call it the pragmatic ending, because it ends with Daniel doing all of the same sort of self-justifying, I went through such a horrible experience, so I earned my redemption thing. But that, pragmatically, again, that's kind of what I would do in the circumstance. I would, looking out for number one, I would be compelled to protect my own life first. Immoral though it may be. So that will be the canonical ending, and it's the one where we knock down all the pillars, so we're going to get to see that one next. And I'm going to get to talk about why I don't like this ending scene very much, because what you'll note there is I had to sit around for a long time before throwing Agrippa's head through. And my big problem with that is there's no danger, and therefore no horror, in that last room. So here we'll get back to the menu and we'll do it again. nothing is immediately threatening in the room, it's almost impossible even to injure yourself. I'm not even sure if it's possible at all to injure yourself in that room while Alexander is talking here.
I was wondering if you were going to show up.
And
I see Agrippa convinced you to run some errands. Tell me, is everything nice and clear now? Am I the villain?
if you want to actually wait for either the quote-unquote good or bad endings, the good ending, putting Agrippa through the portal, the bad ending, just letting Alexander finish the ritual.
That you see no good in me or evil
Shut
in
up,
Agrippa.
man. I'm trying to talk here. You have to wait so long to do that, that it's legitimately boring. Like, you're just sitting around here, oh, you can hurt yourself on that. Nothing is attacking you, nothing in the room is giving you the impression of danger. You're just running around this room, kind of fiddling with random things, trying to figure out what you can do. Which means it's also almost inevitable.
No, don't do that.
No, don't do that! Sounds like
I realize
kindergarten.
without my
Come on.
conscience,
Don't do
why
that!
I take such extreme measures.
You're
to
messing with
save
my
your
stuff.
life. Maybe I'm saving mine too.
You spend... They just give you so much time to do this that, like, even if you wanted to do the Agrippa's thing, I feel like if you came into this room thinking, okay, I gotta wait for the portal to open, you wouldn't know that you were supposed to just sit there and wait. You'd knock these things down anyway just because there's nothing else to do and you're not sure how to progress. Because there's no clear indication that waiting is an option, right? They give you the impression some bad shit's gonna happen.
A whole other world.
But look how long you have to wait,
Isn't it beautiful?
you know?
I can finally return home.
So this is the bad ending. That's what we're getting here.
But you, I am sorry, Daniel. You won't be able to enter. You are still tainted, branded by the shadow. It will consume you either way.
So what I'm thinking is how I would have handled this is, first of all, a much shorter time. Get that portal open very quickly. Give them no more than about 30 seconds, probably. And then telegraph...
Please, let me go!
Oh, jeez. Uh-oh. Telegraph that you're supposed to do something with the pillars more heavily. Like, they'll give you that flash at the beginning where the light at the top of this pillar flares up. But, like, keep reinforcing that idea. This bit is really good. If you just literally do nothing for an enemy to die, this last bit where the room is slowly filling up with red while you run around trying to avoid from dying, that's properly scary. That's a properly horrifying ending for the bad ending. Here we'll get another voiceover.
Thank you, my friend. Your sacrifice won't be forgotten. You will be celebrated forever.
So yeah, that one's a definitively bad ending because Alexander, who is by far the greatest villain, the one who actively just murders children, who actively deceives Daniel and gets him to murder children, right? Like, there's a legitimate claim to him being far and above the most horrible person in this entire story, even though there are other people who make bad decisions. He is by far the villain of the piece. So yeah, this one earns that title, the bad ending. But yeah, my biggest problem is you're not doing okay, look, your final event, your final boss level, if you will, is supposed to be a test, the culmination of the training that you've received, the final exam. What did you learn, right? In a game, I hate to do a callback to such an ancient game that relatively few people will probably have played, but the old Deus Ex, the original Deus Ex, not Human Revolution. But they drop you into a room. It's an enormous room with almost three different puzzles to solve, all three of which require stealth, require hacking, require all of the mechanics of the game working in concert to succeed in. This one, there's not even a monster in the room. You're not hiding from anything. You're not what would be really great, hiding from something while trying to solve a physics puzzle. Like if it was, I don't know, a big labyrinthine thing and you had to run to each of these pillars and knock it down. And there was also the countdown clock, but in addition to that, there were brutes running around trying to catch you. So you have to be quick as well as careful. You know, it's none of that. It's just sitting and waiting in a completely safe space, or just doing the only thing you even can do, which is knock down the pillars. So we'll do the one last ending, the revenge ending. This is the one that I did, and it's probably the canonical one because it's got the longest voiceover at the end. Also, they play some really loud music over the credits, so I think it's kind of the one that was supposed to happen, whatever that's worth. But now, you know, if I get the chance to talk a bit about linearity, this is the first branch point in this game, the first point where my input affects the story in any way. Within a given level, kind of, there's a small narrative going on that's just about me fighting monsters.
I was wondering if you were going to show up. I see Agrippa convinced you to run some errands. Tell me, is everything nice?
There we go.
Oh, don't do that.
No, don't do that. I did that. I went there. This is the first influence I have over the branching of this story, and it's such a trivial thing because it's just the very end. In each of the levels, I sort of you can put a little narrative about you running away from monsters. But each of those levels, you know, all of the objectives of the level are in a fixed location. All of the major goals are in a fixed location. All the monster scripted events are scripted. They happen at the same time. Once you beat the level, there's just no reason to play that level up again. It took me a really long time to record this finale because it was such a boring pain in the ass to have to keep erasing saves or editing saves so that I could come back and do this again. Because it's not fun. It's not interesting the second time around. By comparison, you know, in a, say, a procedurally generated game, the
You
level's
think I was
different every
afraid
time.
fleeing Brennenburg? Quite the contrary.
The game is what's bringing you back. The doing of puzzles, the hiding from monsters, all of that stuff, the core elements of the gameplay.
I knew it was my
They're what's
purgatory.
really...
Hellfire made to
They're
wash
what's
away
worth it.
my
Whereas here,
sins.
the story is what it's all about, right? You're completing these challenges, and the story's there as your reward. But the story itself is completely non-interactive, right?
There's no denying
It's not
the
that that's a
things I've
bad
done.
thing. It's just that it feels
I
to me
have
like
paid
it's
my
a lost
tribute.
opportunity.
I gave them that awful man.
It's a
I
place where they
did
could
the
have
right
given you
thing.
more. And they just didn't. They chose not to. They were like, no, the levels we've built are enough. As long as we can keep your attention from A to B. That's all we really want to do. I was like, alright. That's fine. That's just fine. So I completely talked over the voiceover there, but hopefully the subtitles were enough. You get Daniel talking about his purgatory, that enduring this bullshit was earned him his freedom. And that, I think, is an okay claim, especially for Amnesia Daniel. Post-Amnesia Daniel, who is me, effectively. Yeah. You know, I'm arguably innocent of Daniel's crimes, so me getting to go out and live my life after this point that's okay. Daniel, original Daniel, pre-Amnesia Daniel, I don't know that I'd want him around my kid, you know, as an example. He's not a safe person. There we get the lovely music there that I was talking about. So, like I said, overall, really solid game. I'm a big fan of Amnesia. I thought it was really good. I give it a B. B for me exceeds standards, exceeds basic expectations. I'd wholeheartedly recommend Amnesia to anybody. Inconsistency is probably its biggest problem. Inconsistency in terms of how monsters are handled. Inconsistency in terms of how puzzles are handled. That ending is really weak. compared to the rest of the game, which was much stronger. And then the linearity, the fact that only at the very end do I have any input on the story, and then it's still just, here are 3 branches. We wrote all 3 of them, but we couldn't pick which one for you, so we decided to let you pick at this stage. You know, an ideal situation, you have what they call like an emergent storyline, where just sort of the things that are happening in the game are writing a narrative in the player's mind, so to speak. And that's quite rare. Much harder to find games that do that well. In any case, that was Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Those are my thoughts. That's everything. I hope it was worth your time. I hope it was worth watching. If you did watch through to this point, I thank you. The series here is called Just for Avery, but as of this recording, Avery has not watched any of the videos. So, you know, if he doesn't actually do it, I might abandon the pursuit, because, I mean, it's a big pain in the ass to do a recording just to play the video game. I enjoyed doing the recordings, I enjoy voicing my thoughts, but I can do that to just the empty room rather than to YouTube. And then I don't have to fight with failed recordings and nonsense like that. But in any case, if you did like it, maybe let me know. Maybe I'll say this in earnest this time. Leave me a comment or give me a thumbs up or whatever the hell the stupid thing is. Just to let me know. And, you know, even if really one other person enjoys the videos, that effectively for me will justify the whole thing. So maybe let me know if you liked it. I don't know. You don't have to, obviously, no obligation. But it would be so gratifying. It would make me feel so good in my emotions place. Anyway, the next game up is going to be Dead Space. I think I've already got the first episode up there. Yes, I do, in fact. I'm probably going to, I don't know, I'll try to record the rest of Dead Space. I don't like the game terribly much, so I'm probably not going to go to the same lengths I did with Amnesia here. I did forget to mention, I went through all that cheating nonsense to get to the ending here before finding out that Amnesia saves auto-saves, which is why I couldn't just reload and replay the ending. But it saves separate auto-saves for every time it makes an autosave, it makes a new one. So when I needed to do the last 2 attempts, I just went back and deleted the new autosave so that it would regress back to the prison cells. Anyway. So, doing this was probably harder than it needed to be, but anyway. I'll shut up now. I've held you for long enough. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you again another time. Bye.